Hello, and welcome back to High Score, the series in which I take a closer look at the use of sound and music in video games. This week, I'm turning down the background audio and turning up the sound effects, looking at how they impact the player's perception of the world around them. Before we start, I'd like to pause again to thank the artists behind this series' artwork. You can see their work and tags on screen now. Cause and effect. Let's quickly think back to video 3, where we discussed the differences between linear media, like film or TV, and non-linear media, like video games. The main difference is interactivity. Video games will never play exactly the same way twice, and their soundtracks must be adaptable to this fact. This impacts not only how music is written and transitions designed, but also how sound effects are created and implemented. In some ways, sound effects have a similar role in movies and video games. The main character's actions will have expected sonic outcomes, and sound effects will help to meet these expectations. For example, a character sprinting would be expected to make heavy footsteps and harsh breathing. Both expectations are met by sound effects. This is where interactivity comes in. Just like their cutscenes, film sound effects will always be played in the same order, at the same volume, with the same dynamic mixing every time. Video games give the player much more control over their character's movement and combat, meaning there's a greater demand for sound effects matching these actions. By meeting the player's sonic expectations, games immerse them further into their world, providing a sense of realism and belief in their avatar. Sound effects, as with all aspects of game audio, also create some additional accessibility concerns. These include allowing the player the ability to alter the volume levels of music and sound effects independently, using dynamic mixing to ensure important sounds aren't missed, and the use of alternatives to sound effects for those with hearing difficulties, such as captions. I'll be talking about audio accessibility in a lot more detail in next week's video. Finally, I'd like to throw out a quick definition. The term diegetic will be used a few times in this video. In video game music terms, diegetic sound is defined as music or audio which originates from within the game world. This could be buskers playing on the street as you pass them.
She's here too soon, well that's what they said.
Or something as simple as birds singing in a forest. If your avatar can hear the music, it's diegetic. Non-diegetic sound, as you might imagine, is defined as the opposite. Music or audio which originates from outside the game world, and that only you, the player, can hear. This covers an area's background music, or any indicators of status or health, like a warning beep. Every step you take. As mentioned in the previous section, the most obvious use of sound effects is in relation to the avatar. When this character creates sound, it makes the player feel as though they themselves made that sound. This mirroring of reality within the game strengthens the player-avatar relationship. The character's movement is the main way in which sound will be created. This could be something as simple as footsteps while walking, or as intricate and detailed as a character breathing during a stealth section. Equipment or items can also make noise, both when used or while being carried. This is an example taken from Breath of the Wild, showing how the stealth armour helps deaden the sound made by both Link's movement and his equipped weapon. On the complete flip side to this, sometimes breaking the fourth wall can be helpful in creating a likeable avatar. This could take the form of an idle animation, an action your character takes after a certain amount of time has passed with no input. These can take various forms, such as Mario sleeping in Super Mario 64.
I'm tired.
Rayman playing keepy-ups with his torso in Rayman 3, or Earthworm Jim using himself as a skipping rope. These animations help remind the player that, while these characters might be controlled by them, they're still individuals in their own right, adding a new dimension into this already complex relationship. Peripherals can provide an even stronger link to the avatar. These are real-life accessories which can be used like controllers to impact and control gameplay. For example, in The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword, the Wii Remote plays the sound of a bowstring tightening and releasing as the player uses the bow and arrow item. This additional sound effect widens the player's field of audio further than the TV screen allows. Peripherals can be taken even further than this. Think of the Guitar Hero series. These games require the use of a plastic guitar-shaped controller to play. These controllers allow the player to mimic playing a real guitar while also making inputs more manageable than they would be in real life. In this case, the player can almost channel real guitar playing through this controller, giving them a greater sense of responsibility for their performance. In using diegetic sound effects like these, developers can create a believable avatar, which, in turn, makes the entire world more believable. In this manner, these sound effects are examples of the player's conscious control of the soundtrack, and they help to create a realistic soundscape. Non-diegetic sound effects can also help the player relate with their avatar. Many games make use of what TV Tropes calls critical annoyance. In other words, a beeping sound or alarm to tell the player that they're low on health or HP. Not only does this act as a gameplay aid, but it can also be tied with a visual change in the avatar, whether they begin slouching, breathing heavily, or looking injured or tired. This can also be used in conjunction with game mechanics, like abilities or items. Upon a cooldown resetting, for example, the game could use a sound effect to alert the player that it's ready to use again. I can show you the world. Of course, it's not only avatars which make sound effects. Sound is created all around us in real life, so why not in video games too? Ambience, such as birds chirping or people chatting, can help create realistic soundscapes and add an extra layer of realism. It would be odd if, walking through a forest in real life, you didn't hear a single sound outside of your own footsteps, right? It should be said that unrealistic sound effects can also be used to create particular atmospheres. A deadly silent forest, for example, could come across as magical or threatening. This all ties into a common issue that video games face. Ultimately, video games are an illusion, a scam. They try to immerse the player in a 3D world, completely surrounding them in new characters, locations and narratives, but at the end of the day, they display on a two-dimensional screen. There is no behind you, it's just in front of you in a different direction. This is where audio comes in. Visuals are strictly two-dimensional, there's literally no getting around that. Sound, while produced at a static point, can be altered to give the illusion of various timbres. For example, making a sound echo distantly gives the effect of being in a large canyon. Giving the sound a short, metallic reverb gives the effect of being in a small space, like a lift. Sound effects can be processed to mimic any manner of space, and while it is still an imitation, it's much more realistic than visuals. The sound director for the 2008 survival horror Dead Space, Andrew Boyd, says, "It's one of those specific things we can do in audio that the graphic guys can't. They're stuck on the screen, while we're right out in the room with you." If diegetic sounds can help immerse the player in their environment, what effect does non-diegetic sound have? They can't be directly related to world building, as they have nothing to do with the world itself. And while they can be edited to have the same environmental effects as diegetic sounds, they'll never actually be heard in that area. Well, there are a few ways in which non-diegetic sounds can be used to enhance world building. The most common is the use of jingles, short sound effects used to notify the player that an action has been carried out successfully. This could be the completion of a puzzle, a letter being posted, or even a meal being cooked to perfection. Not only do these signal success to the player, but they're often composed in such a way to make the player feel satisfied. Yes, they completed that puzzle, and they should feel damn good about it. Visuals like sparks are often used to enhance this feeling. Conclusion. Sound effects, like all game music, are used to create realistic soundscapes and enhance the player's experience. They can do this by making the avatar's actions more believable and relatable through movement or items. They can also be used non-diegetically, alerting the player to ability cooldowns and status effects. Peripherals are often used to take this player-avatar relation to a new level, allowing the player to transform their actions into gameplay itself. The Guitar Hero series makes use of this heavily. Sound effects can also create realistic soundscapes for the player to explore. Whether it be a vast cavern or a cramped meeting room, sound can be changed and altered to reflect the player's surroundings, making the world more believable. We touched on a startling truth in this video, that games, like cakes, are just lies with fancy coats on. They aim to convey a fully developed world, complete with environments, people and activities, but in reality are just a collection of dots on a flat surface. This is a big concept that could take up a whole video on its own, so it's probably easier if you just accept you've been lied to. Numerous camera angles can only go so far to creating a behind you. What's really behind you is audio, and edited audio at that. Music and sound can be used to expand the reach of a game, immersing the player in what is really just a sleight of hand. With those deep truths out of the way, we've reached the end of this video. It was quite a short one, but did touch on some ideas that were each way too big for a single section. If you want to dig deeper into anything you've heard about, check out the references I've used, or let me know if you have any burning questions. Next week, I'm tackling two massive areas of sound within the video game industry. Within the last decade, accessibility has become an increasingly important aspect of video game design, ensuring that everyone, regardless of ability, can enjoy the experience. And yes, in the year 2021, I'm talking about copyright. This is a huge area on its own, covering everything from remixes to intellectual property, and it's something that video game companies are notoriously bad at handling. Why? Well, I'll attempt to find out next week. I'll see you then.